Hello, I am Michael Marsh, and welcome to the program dedicated to reestablishing constitutional government, first in Oregon and then in the United States. Now, I'm also a candidate for Secretary of State for the state of Oregon, and you ask, why am I a candidate? Well, for one thing, Brad Avakian's only claim to fame is he found a couple in Gresham $135,000 for not making a wedding cake for a lesbian couple. We're talking about the Portland area. It's not like there weren't 1,000 other bakeries that he could have gone to and gotten this cake. So, and plus the $135,000, the Oregon Constitution says that when an amount over $5,000 is involved in a civil matter, that the people have a right to a jury trial. No jury trial was offered. It was just the bureaucracy decided they were going to levy this fine, and that was it. And there's way too much of that. It's not just Department of Labor and Industry that do that. You know, just about all the government agencies do that now. In violation of in this case, in violation of Oregon's constitutional. And it's Article 1, I believe it's Section 17, if I remember correctly. So you can look it up. You should probably read all of Article 1. That's our equivalent to the Bill of Rights. And Section 17, that's the one that says you have a right to a jury trial. And you should know that because the attorneys aren't going to demand your constitutional rights. You have to do that because the attorneys have to work with the bureaucracies and the courts. And neither the bureaucracies or the courts believe in the Constitution, so you have to know what your rights are. And in fact, most lawyers probably don't know what your constitutional rights are. A good example is I had a relative who was going through a nasty divorce, and I told him he should have a jury trial because the Oregon Constitution says you can have a jury trial. His lawyer told him there's no right to a jury trial in a divorce case. Excuse me, but if you look it up, there's quite a few divorce cases that are in the Court of Appeals, and that talk about the jury's decision in the Supreme Court. Yeah. So yeah, you do have that right, but they don't really teach constitutional law, federal or Oregon, and especially Oregon's constitutional law. So you need to know what your rights are. But I'm off topic, I guess, a little bit. And the reason I say that is, what does that have to do with Oregon Secretary of State? Okay. Most of the Oregon Secretary of State's job is administrative. We do audits. There's a record keeping. And speaking of record keeping, I actually agree with one thing that Brad Avakian said he'd like to do is put everything digital, make it easier to access it, and especially get it out to the schools and children. Now, I'm assuming that he's going to put everything on there. The good, the bad, the ugly, which I would do. I would do that part. That's the only thing I agree with Brad Avakian on. But I don't believe he should be Secretary of State. Now you say, well, he's a Democrat, and there's 900,000 Democrats and 600,000 Republicans and 3,000 Constitution Party members, and so why shouldn't he be? Well, that $135,000 fine for one thing. Yeah, that's, like I said, that's his claim to fame. And whether you agree with gay marriage or not, that's insane. Where did he come off giving a $135,000 fine? And what's he going to do as Secretary of State? And before doing this program, I did look up what he's advocating. He wants to audit both the the audit division of the Secretary of State's office to audit both the state, which he's authorized to do, and private corporations, which he's not really authorized for. And he wants to crack down on them and all that. Now, one thing, his first thing is he's advocating for good governance. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, he wants to hold corporations accountable for, quote, abuses and make sure they're fulfilling the public trust, public contract, whatever that means. So what does that mean? Now keep in mind, you might want to think about this. Most churches are nonprofit corporations. They're listed in the Secretary of State's office. A lot of hospitals, the Adventists have a hospital in Portland. Now, there's some public hospital, like Salem Hospital. There's the Adventist Hospital up there in Portland. Providence, I believe, is a church-run hospital. Now, these are nonprofits. So because they're nonprofit, they get donations, and their donations can be counted against their tax. Take a look at private schools. A lot of churches here in town, the Episcopal Church has a school for elementary kids. There's several Lutheran churches have schools for kids. Seventh-day Adventists have a Livingstone Academy. The Catholic Church has St. Joseph's and here in downtown Salem, and then there's St. Vincent de Paul in North Salem. Probably several hundred other schools. So you put someone like Brad Avakian, who believes that the government has a right to force its policies on other people, and onto the private sector. Hospitals are vulnerable. He can go in and say, "Are you performing abortions?" And if they say no, he can crack down on them, investigate them, harass them. He wants to be able to punish corporations that don't do business with the way he wants them to. He has to go to the legislature for that, but would a Democratic legislature go along with him, or would they oppose him? And the obvious answer is they would go along with him. So if he's elected, he will probably use his power to give church-run hospitals the option. They can either shut down or they can start performing abortions, even if they don't believe abortion is right. Do you want that kind of man as your Secretary of State? And Then talk about the schools. Now, I know one woman, she's sending school, her child to a church-run school, and I don't know which church school it is. He's 7 years old. And the reason she's sending him there is because the federal government, in all its glorious wisdom, has decided to confuse children on gender issues. You know, everybody uses the same bathroom. You can be a boy today or a girl today or whatever you want. And it has nothing to do with your biology. It's just whatever, you know. And they're doing it really, let's be honest, they're doing it to confuse the kids on their gender. You know, a 5-year-old, you know, they're just still figuring out what species they are, much less their gender. And the federal government and, you know, the Democratic Party as a whole, they want the kids confused. And let's be honest, the government, they're more concerned about what bathrooms they use than whether or not they're actually learning anything that would make them able to be wealthy and prosperous and good citizens. So, yeah, she's looking at where the government schools are, and she put hers into a private school, a Christian school. And it's costing her quite a bit. Now, you put Brad Avakian into power, into the Secretary of State's office, he's going to be investigating these schools. And he's going to say, okay, you got to have the same rules that the government schools do, or we're going to shut you down. And he will try to shut them down. Do you want that? Do you want a Brad Avakian to be Secretary of State? Because he has power of the audit, and he's in charge of the corporate division, and he's going to use that. Now, he's not supposed to use it that way, but he will, and he says he will. Why wouldn't? And he has a past, you know, as head of the labor industries bureaucracy. So, how are you going to? So, you can't say he won't do it, because he will, even though it's not really his job to do that. He's going to be misusing the office, just as he misused every other office he's ever had. Now, there are other issues that he brings up. For instance, he does want easy access to information. He wants to put our historical documents online so they can be accessed. And I agree with him on that. Now, I would do that too. Because, you know, and keeping the state records, that is part of the Secretary of State's job. He also wants to, you know, make some changes in the, he has civics education he's advocating. Now, I agree that the kids should have civics, although that's really more of the governor's job, because the Department of Education is under the governor now, which is one of the many reasons that I will support Aaron Auer to be our governor. But civics, yeah, that's important. But a civics curriculum devised by Brad Avakian, how honest is it going to be? Do you trust him? I don't. And he wants this thing called youth votes, which is very interesting. He wants to send out ballots, and I assume a voter pamphlet to every kid in every school, you know, let them do it, and they're going to have a youth vote. You know, now, I believe it's a good idea for the kids to sit around with the parents as they read the ballot voters pamphlet, and I really like the idea of a voters pamphlet. Although it'd be nice if it was a little easier to get into it. But he's actually planning to send them out through the county clerks, and it's going to cost them a lot of money. Yeah, every school, and then they're going to have fake ballots that they're going, and they're going to count them. They say they're going to count them after the election's over, but yeah, who knows? Should they, why can't a teacher bring, if you want it in the classroom, why can't a teacher bring his or her pamphlet, voters pamphlet, and discuss with the class? And probably more than one class, do a week's worth, 2 weeks. That'd be good. The kids can discuss it with the teacher, and the kids can discuss it with their family, and they should. And they can also get the voters pamphlets into the homes if they want, according to Brad Avakian. That's one of the things he wants to do. And I don't have a problem with the kids learning all this. They should. They should be, But I do have a problem with the county clerks sending all this stuff out, because that's not really their job, and it's a lot of money going to be spent, and it shouldn't be. Now, a major issue that separates me and Brad Avakian is he wants to expand the voter thing. Anytime anybody has dealings with the state, they're going to be automatically registered. Although, probably if you're having a problem with the state, you should become registered and let your state representative and state senator know that you are registered. But I'm against the motor voter thing. I would, and this is Kate Brown's idea, she's now governor. They're automatically registering people when you file for, to get your license renewed or get an ID, state ID. They're automatically registering you to vote. Now, I recently changed my address, and I had to re-register. It took me about 30 seconds. If somebody wants to register to vote, they can do that quite easily. It's not a difficult thing, but it should be voluntary. And I believe everybody who's eligible to vote should be voting. I think we'd have and I think you should pay attention. If people paid as much attention to our government as they did to Oregon football or the Portland Trail Blazers, we'd probably have a much better government. But that's wishful thinking on my part, I guess. But it's important. I would not waste the money on this youth vote thing. Although I do think I would encourage the children to learn, basically with their parents, and even in the classroom. But I don't think it has to be done at the taxpayers' expense. Under protection of fraud, he says he wants to ensure that corporations obey the law and they obey, in fulfill their compliance with the public contract, whatever that means. And once again, keep in mind, churches are part of the, they're nonprofits, but they are corporations, nonprofit corporations. Hospitals, a lot of them Some are public, like Salem Hospital, but others, like Adventist General up in Portland, are run by churches. A lot of churches have schools, elementary schools, high schools, middle schools. These are nonprofit corporations under the Secretary of State. And he's going to be checking into them, see if they're complying with whatever the public contract is and whatever the laws are. Now, under Brad Avakian's viewpoint, gay marriage is the law. Okay, so if they go into a gay couple goes into a Catholic church or a Baptist church or Assemblies of God church and says that they want to be married, the pastor or the priest says, no, it's against our religion. Brad Avakian's going to be coming down on them. He's going to try to destroy these churches. If the schools are not advocating same-sex relationships, or maybe they're advocating that abstinence, he's going to come down on them. He's going to say, you got to do what the government schools are doing. Do you want him to have that power? And if you vote for him, he will have that power, and he will use it. He says he's going to use it. Take his word for it. He has a history. He also wants, Brad Avakian also says that he wants to publicly finance campaigns. No. I mean, yeah, would I like to have money for my campaign? Yes, I would. But not everybody would like to see me be Secretary of State. And why should they have to pay for me to get my message out? And, for instance, many of you probably don't want Brad Avakian to be Secretary of State. At least I hope you don't. So why should you be paying for his campaign? And, kind of evil in a way to be forced to pay for campaigns that you don't believe in. Now, he also wants to limit corporate spending in elections. But you'll note he said corporation spending. He doesn't say anything about government unions or unions at all. He's willing for them to spend all the money they want. He just wants to stop corporations spending money. And let's be honest, corporations don't spend anywhere near much money as the unions. And the government unions are spending our money to add insult to injury. Now, personally, I'd like to see that stopped. But that would have to come from the legislature, not Secretary of State's office. Another job of the Secretary of State is he's one of 3 members of the Oregon Land Use Board. The governor and the state treasurer are the other 2. Now, he wants to use that position to keep all Oregon land pretty much the way they are, although he does say he would allow geothermal facilities in southern and central Europe. Southern and central Oregon, which is where they could work, and he wants to put windmills and solar panels up in eastern Oregon. On the east, windmills, no, I would vote no. They kill birds, and I like birds. And I don't think they provide that much enough electricity to warrant the loss of bird life. The solar panels, Solar works on a limited basis right now. We don't, the technology, you know, I would look at other places like California. They've got a massive solar panel facility that they're trying to put together, that they're trying to use. How's it working out? I would want to see it work before, you know, I would do it here in Oregon. And I don't believe that solar is ready for the kind of use that they want it to. You know, like I said, it's good for, you know, a local house, and there's solar panel generators. Small use it works, but for large scale usage, you know, to power up a city, it's not ready yet. So I would say no. So the only one I would go along with is geothermal in southern and eastern, central Oregon. That I would go along with. But I would also be willing to let companies come in and cut the land. I would not sell the land itself. And if the company comes in and cuts the timber, you know, they got to replant. And you know, I would be for, you know, that would be part, and they would have to protect the waterways and stuff like that, yeah. But it would stay Oregon's land. I would not sell the land. I would also be an advocate for returning most of Oregon's land that's controlled by the federal government to the state of Oregon. The Oregon lands were originally set up to pay for schools and pay for the government. Oregon was meant to be a self-sustaining entity. They weren't supposed to be taxing people, the income tax. I'd kind of like to see that go back to that, although that's not really the Secretary of State's job, but I would like to see Oregon become self-sufficient. And natural resources are a part of that, a necessary part of that. And I'm about out of time, but if you like what I had to say, and you know, vote for me. I'm Michael Marsh. I'm the Constitution Party candidate for Secretary of State. And I think most of the candidates, you know, I've talked with Dennis Richardson, he'd be okay. I've talked with the Libertarian Sharon Durbin. In fact, I've had her on the program. I've had Alan Zindell on the program. I think they would do an honest job. We would probably disagree with the latter two on land use. But vote for me, Michael Marsh, Constitution Party candidate for Secretary of State. Thank you.